And now, Joe, it is finally time for us to look back on the year that was in comics. And you've said it a lot. Like, this was a really, really good year for comic books. I mean, there was so much awesome stuff. I mean, I want to keep it general now because we're going to get into specifics later, but there were just some publishers that had outstanding years. From storytelling perspective too. I mean, people like Snyder and Cates and other names that we're going to mention on the show that we have jotted down that I don't want to mention yet. Lemire, all these different writers had outstanding years, and then the artists too. Awesome year to be a comic book fan.
Yeah. This was something else. It's just so many great titles, and even like writers, I should say that were fairly well known. Like had breakout years, which
Mm.
is outstanding. Astounding considering their work that they had already had out previously. So it was a great year. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to see what 2022 brings. But let's kick things off, Nicholas, with the top 5 books that we suggested. So what I'm gonna, what I'll do is I'll talk about the 5 books that I suggested. You'll do yours, and then we'll get in. I'll talk about my top 5 books that you suggested, and vice versa. So, like taking a look back at all the books, like we haven't had a lot of mainline issues recently, but we did do a lot of mainline issues,
Oh
obviously
yeah.
in 2021. And so some of my favorite ones that I talked about were, I think this one had the most impact on me, especially emotionally. And I actually talked to the writer about it
Right.
um, here, and that was Bliss, written by
Hmm.
Sean Lewis. This was, I mean, the art was beautiful, the story was fantastic, the emotional gut punch that his sort of letter was at the end was really impactful. I had a great time discussing that book on the show. I had a great time discussing that book with Sean himself, which was a real treat, something that we don't always get to
That's a
do.
unique experience. Like we have a lot of fun with our guests on, and we get to do a lot of different things. But that is a very unique experience that we don't always get to do, especially right after it finishes.
Yeah. So that was the first one. Crossover. Man, I'm going to be talking about this book a lot today. Absolutely love this series.
Hmm.
Radiant Black. That was one that I had zero expectations for. I read the first issue, it blew me away, and I've gone on to read it. You're reading it. We talked to Kyle Higgins. I mean, just that was an awesome one. Robin, which just really kind of like floored me. How much I liked it, considering the title of the book and the character. And then the autumnal. I mean,
Mm.
this book had a lot of influence. I've talked about it and read it. You've talked about it and read it. We got Keith to read it. We talked about it on the Door podcast. Like that made like the top 10 horror list there. Like that again, wonderfully written
Yeah.
horror on a sort of a different sort of again on that Scott Snyder sort of witches kind of feel to it. But Chris Sheehan's art too was awesome. Like just was just like a quintessential for me perfect horror book.
Yeah. I don't want to get into too much about your books because I do have my own list and I have
Yep.
opinions on a lot of the stuff that you said. I will say that I think most of the ones, several of the ones that you mentioned that you talked about, made my list of the books that you broke down this year. One Bliss, I do want to mention though. You talked about your conversation with Sean. I mentioned how it was unique. Getting to listen to that and watch it for that matter too. You guys go back and forth on that because obviously I didn't have anything to add at the time. It was an experience for me too because especially as someone who's not a father too, hearing you guys go off about all that, it was really I just felt it felt special to me being able to listen in and watch this conversation take place and I just feel like I learned a little bit and learned a little more about you too. So that was one of like when you talk about we're not doing like the best moments of TLDR, which maybe in hindsight we should have tried to think about that, but whatever. Because well, obviously we know what number one would be, and it would have been having Scott and Greg on at the same time and doing the live stream. But that would be up there for honorable mention. You and Sean, just you guys talking about Bliss. Never mind having to want to talk about King Spawn and everything.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that, and that's one of my bigger moments from this year for sure.
Yeah. Now, when you look at what I recommended for the people this year and to you, Joseph, the plot holes was, of course, right to the top of my list. Actually, the first 3 books are all Sean Murphy books, although Tokyo Ghost was written by Rick Remender. Punk Rock Jesus. Now, I picked that book out, right? I picked that book out, and I was like, okay, this is kind of like, this is not really a Christmas book. And if anything, people who are like really devout and everything are probably going to get annoyed by this book. But to me, it was a real thinker. And because and I've said it, like anything that's like faith related, I'm gonna be interested in giving a chance. When you get too preachy, I don't like that. But when with this is more asking questions and kind of wrestling with things and trying to figure out, like, and then just looking at like real world, like how would people respond if Jesus was actually reborn? Like if he's not what you expect him to be, but he says he's him and he can quote unquote perform miracles, like, are you gonna listen to him or are you not? Like, if you were originally so devout, but his ways that you were taught your whole life aren't actually his ways; they're actually the church's ways. So I really really enjoyed Punk Rock Jesus. And then, but the plot holes just came out this year, and I tweeted out, by the way, for everybody, Sean Lewis is Sean Murphy is they printed out extra copies that's going to be available. I think it's February or March. I tweeted out at Fry_Guy1. He's been posting all that stuff on his Instagram as well, but he is off Twitter. But you're going to be able to buy that hard copy if you want to get it and didn't back the Indiegogo campaign.
Yeah, 100% doing that.
Got to move fast on that though, for sure. Tokyo Ghost. I mean, this got optioned for a movie this year. It's 2 arcs, both Image. It was from Image. Like, really enjoyed that experience too. That one, like, it's all about addiction, and honestly, I read that thing like it was crack. It was awesome. Reborn, Millar and Capullo. I mean, anytime you got like a good story and Capullo's drawing it, I mean, you don't need to spend an episode on it. I wanted to and did, but like, you don't need to. It's a good story. Greg Capullo's in. All right, it could be coming. It's a Netflix property too, so could get more from that down the line. And then Bunny Mask. I mean, of all the books that came across our ledger this year that like we built up before doing a full episode on it, I think Bunny Mask had to be number 1 for me in that regard.
Yeah, I've got to read that one. We've got I think we got a trade coming up soon. So yeah, it doesn't help me when it gets dark out by like 3:00 now. So like no daylight to read, so I might have to get pushed off until the spring. But those were all, great books. So, to sort of, kick flip Ollie 360, McTwist off that.
Wow.
The top 5 TLDR books of 2020 that our co-host suggested. I mean, for me, with a fucking bullet, is Saga.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like how I hadn't read this already, but like where we are with that, what's coming up with Saga, the fact that it's returning, I couldn't be any more fucking pumped for that. So, I mean, to me, Saga is like the perfect comic book. At least it's the perfect. Well, it is the perfect comic book, but specifically like when you think of indie comic books, like it's Saga. Like that's what you want. It's off the wall. It's nuts. It's 1,000 miles an hour. But it's also, it's deep, thought provoking, all that stuff. It's fucking perfect.
Yeah, it really is.
Tokyo Ghost. I love this. I mean, you want to talk like you said, like crack, just devoured it. Like I think I read this thing in one sitting. I love Sean Murphy's art. You've turned me on to to his stuff there, and and plot holes, right? So there's more Sean Murphy stuff. Like both of those things, that they couldn't be any more different, but they're so engaging. And the way Sean, writes and he pulls you in, and the way he, constructs a story, like both these books, if you haven't read them, do it. They're absolutely fantastic. 7 Secrets, right? This was sort of the, this was the get on the Tom Taylor train now, because it is fucking rolling. This was, what kicked things off, for the Tom Taylor assance. And this was a fun book to read. Like I really enjoyed. Like this was one of those books too, where like I had read the first issue, you called dibs, so I actually listened to you on this one and backed off and stopped reading it.
The truth comes out. He read King of Spies, everybody.
Oh, did I? We'll see. But this, I mean, this was awesome. And I think we're getting more, right?
Yeah, we have to. There's no,
Yeah,
I don't know when, like, because he's got the
right.
whole DC, the contract with DC now. I really hope that is the one bit of bad news that could come from his exclusive deal with DC, that we may not get any more Seven Secrets for at
I
least for
mean,
an extended period of time.
oh, man, it's such a good story.
I'll be pissed if we don't
Um,
keep it for a while, man.
and then Reborn, right?
Hmm.
Reborn.
Really good,
That was awesome.
easy read.
Absolutely, real easy read. Again, it's thought provoking. It's got great action. I mean, Capula's art is top notch. All these books you've read, I talked about on the show. Love them, loved them, loved them.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And the thing with mine, I think too, is like, well, I mean, in general, the pacing. Any good story is going to have the proper pacing, but I know I talk about it so much, but when you look at a book like Tokyo Ghost, where there's definitely like it can get dialogue heavy, Punk Rock Jesus, the same thing. I know I'm talking just about Murphy, but like when you go and look at Reborn, like that can get pretty fast moving. Saga moves at there's a lot in Saga, but it moves at a very, very heightened pace. And it's just like and that's like it doesn't just have to be, low on dialogue and like art dominant in order to have a good pace. It's just it needs to be consistent and have some semblance of a rhythm. And I'm looking at all those that you're mentioning, because I know I didn't mention Seven Secrets or Saga, but it's like I feel that way about all of them. Like we're
Yeah,
just some of these we liked, but then they kind of get off. It's like you lost your finger's not on the pulse anymore with the book, and it's frustrating when that happens.
yeah.
As for the books that you recommended to me this year, there was a little bit of crossover. I mentioned Bliss because, like, again, the conversation that you had with Sean about it for me was unique. That's not something we've had on the show at all. Like how that book impacted you as a reader, as a person, and everything. And hearing him kind of like every person we've had on for the show, and we're not ranking anybody that we've had on the show because that's just we love all the writers and artists that we've had on, and we've had quite a few this year. But everybody brings their own thing to this show when we have them on as a guest, and you like Sean gets really deep and can get really personal about his stuff with us, and it's really interesting. And it enhances the stories that we see from him. And King Spawn's a little bit different, but he's obviously been kicking ass with that. But hearing you and him go in about Bliss, really, really enjoyed that conversation. The Autumnal, you mentioned that one. Absolutely. Like this one of it's a top 10 hashtag dork horror book, and it rightfully so. We one Keith over on that one because I made sure to read that beforehand, and it was like, wow. Like this was one of those books. This was the first book actually that you said you called dibs on, and I was like, okay, but I'm going to collect all the single issues.
Yeah,
And
right.
that was killing me. Like, oh, that was so. But I don't hate that I had to binge it either, because it was really like it's just I
Yeah,
didn't want to put it down when I picked it up. I mentioned Sean, and Thumbs was one for me that's like this is a tech thing. Like, I don't like this stuff. And this was like we had this is my first introduction to Sean too, because we had already read was Superman and Metropolis that he did in Future State, and that was good. But this was like his first like where he had free reign. He can kind of do whatever the hell he wants. A little more of an expansive story, and I really really enjoyed that series and its technology stuff. And I love commentary on that all the time. I'm always in on commentary on technology like I am with religion. Um, I know we said 5, but Crossover and Radiant Black, I kind of want to like mention them both just because like they're both amazing series. And
yeah.
I probably would have picked them up eventually, but like so that's why I'm putting them in together. But they're both awesome. I mean, you were
Absolute
on them right
bangers.
away,
Yeah,
right away.
yeah,
And getting to, like you said, getting to talk to Kyle about Radiant Black was a lot of fun. On top of oh my god, why am I drawing a blank on Ordinary Gods? Yeah.
yeah,
And then Hotel was probably my favorite one that you did. That's such a good story. Was
yeah.
that Lee's that writes that one for AWA? Oh
John
my,
Lees and Dal Bartologic.
oh Joe, it's so good. It's scary. It's like an
Yeah,
amazing
that's horror on
story.
a different level than Autumnal is, right? Like, I think, I mean, I read books like Hotel because they do scare the shit out of me, and they're enjoyable because it's the same reason why people watch horror movies.
Mhm.
Um, for me, that's why I read those types. But then, like for me, like Autumnal was different because it was this. I don't know. The horror was more of a build up,
Mhm.
and but both were just just absolutely fantastic. I mean, Hotel is just so fucked up, you
Mhm.
know.
And as much and I know some people will like to make that claim like, "Oh, everything's been done already." Of course, we're still seeing new stories, and you're making changes, whether it's like who's at the center of a story, but also how stories are told. And don't get me wrong, we're seeing a lot of like stories told in different ways for sure across the board, whether it's film or comics or anything in between. But with this, like the way the story's told here, I just can't recall ever seeing anything like it from Lee's. Like I guess American Horror Story is like the closest vibe to that, but still, it's like, and I'm not as familiar with that property, but still, it is different. And I really like if you like scary books, 100%, that's the one that you have to pick
I
up.
mean, it's macabre. I
Yeah,
mean, it's the absolute definition of macabre,
yeah.
and it's each issue is its own sort of thing, and they're just sort of loosely connected, by a linear thread, but not so much where you have to have read this one in order to get this one. No, and that's what makes it enjoyable because then when it does come together, you're like, oh, it's like I said, it's sort of like Pulp Fiction in
Hmm.
that regard, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, that's enough navel gazing at least for now. Let's look ahead to or look back at the top 5 ongoing series according to Dr. Joe from 2021.
And so we excluded events for this, right? And so it could have started in 2020, but they had to have at least had multiple issues in 2021. So I went, Philadelphia was hands down one of my favorite books this year to read. That it was always on the top of my stack. We've mentioned these next two already, Radiant Black and Crossover, like
Mhm.
must reads every week. I almost Crossover 10, it took me an extra like week or two to read, but like generally right on top of that.
Right.
This next one was a little surprising because I had given up on X-Men.
That's right, you
I
had.
I give but Hickman stopped writing them, and I forget who's writing it now, but it's been fantastic. Everything X-Men right now is on fire, right?
Mhm.
You get the X-Men, the current X-Men series going on. The trial of Magneto has been great. So that one has been a top 5 for me, and then King Spawn.
Mhm.
King Spawn has been
Oh, yeah.
absolutely fantastic.
King Spawn is right there on my list as well. When you look at my top 5 too, of course we talk about X-Men too. There's Wolverine from our guy Benjamin Percy, who
Right, right.
has some stuff that we're excited about for next year coming up very soon. So hopefully, we're hoping to circle back with him at some point on all of that. Just kind of got to figure out how to maneuver, spoilers and exactly the best way to go about that conversation. But we do have every intent of circling back with him. He had mentioned that first when we spoke. We had him on over the summer, I think it was, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken. Yeah.
yeah.
But for me, the top 5 ongoing series of 2021, yeah, King Spawn is right there. That's I don't want to. Well, we're going to talk about what our top series of the year is too. I don't want to give anything away, but the plot holes. Now that is a one. I forget if it was 1 to 5 or 6 issues. But 5 or 6 issues. One thing, Sean Murphy could do more. I don't necessarily think he's going to. He doesn't have to if he doesn't want to. He left it in a good spot. But I inhaled this thing. I mean, this is just like it's just like everything about comics that I want. Like you have a diverse cast, diverse background, in like it's fun, but there's high stakes and there's a ridiculousness and satire. It's just everything. But then King Spawn is like this is like Sean has absolutely dominated this series, and like this is for me. King Spawn comes out. I mean, that's like every week. That's the first book I'm reading. 100%.
Yeah.
That is my number one book every single week. And then, of course, another Image book is Newburn, which Joe and I have had the benefit of getting to read the first 5 issues. So we have got a little look at what's coming in the future for you all in 2022. But I still really love the first 2 issues. It just gets better from here on out.
Yeah.
I have no problem like putting that in this grouping. Same goes for Nita Hawes' Nightmare blog. I know issue 3 is coming out in 2022. We've only gotten the first 2, but I mean, after
So good.
just 3 issues, I was like, I like this more than Philadelphia. I really like Philadelphia a lot, and it is objectively one of the absolute best books that are out there right now in comics, no questions asked. But I like Nita Hawes more right now, man. It's so good.
Yeah, it really is. It really is because it's taking that great writing that Rodney does in Philadelphia, and even though it's not Jason Sean Alexander drawing it, I think it's Lewis NCT. It's got that same vibe. It's got that same ferociousness.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
where it's more of that crime mystery thriller aspect to it. And so it's fantastic.
Yeah, really is. I mean, get in and if you didn't read Philadelphia, first of all, what are you doing? Second of all, go read it. But third, you can read this and not have read Philadelphia, and you will be fine.
Yes,
Um,
100%.
and then the last one, I'm surprised this one didn't make your list. We talk about Cullen Bunn and how good of a year he had, and he's up there for one of the best writers of the year. But Lucky Devil Man
Yeah,
is so good.
it
And then
really.
again, I know some of these we've only gotten so many issues, but I mean, what was it? We've gotten 4 or 5 issues on that, and that has knocked my socks off.
Yeah, it's he's I think the only one like that I was a little disappointed in that or I should say fell a little bit short of what maybe my expectations were too high, but Parasomnia, just because that got a little too
Mhm.
weird and trippy, but like just Basilisk, Phantom on the Scan,
Yeah, that's
Lucky
right.
Devil, and
Last book you'll ever read.
the last book, like so freaking good, so
Yeah.
freaking good. And I probably should have, one of those books on here, but like, I mean, that's what I said. Like 2021 was such a good year, so many
Mhm.
good books. That's something inherently just has to get left off the list because
Yeah.
of everything else.
And 2022 could be significantly better. That's the crazy part. It could absolutely be a lot better because we're gonna get more of these and so on. But for our honorable mentions for this year, I personally have Gunslinger Spawn. I think that if you like Spawn, pick this up. It's a lot of fun. I don't like it's probably towards the end of my top 10, but it's like in terms of like saying like all around quality, but it's fun. I really enjoy it. The art's awesome. Brett Booth kicks ass. And then for Shadecraft, that's another book I was really excited to talk about. It was only 5 issues where they could not go back to it if they don't want to, but they absolutely could pick up where they left off and keep going with it. I hope they do. I think it got option for a Netflix series too. Really enjoyed that. I mentioned Bunny Mask too. I really enjoyed talking about it this year. It comes up just short of this cut, but it was of the top 5, but it was really, really good. And then both Mighty Morphin and Power Rangers absolutely kicked ass. Get in on that. If you're a Power Rangers fan and you haven't read Power Rangers stuff, get in on this. You only need to have like just a little bit of an idea of what happened on the Higgins run and everything, and you should be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I had Nita Ha's Nightmare blog on my
Mm.
as my one of my honorable mentions. New Burn as well. I love both those books. The Me You Love in the Dark, Scotty
Mm.
Young and Jorge Corona. Really love this series, and definitely going to talk about that soon.
Hmm.
And Department of Truth. I mean, it's
Ah.
been a weird year for Tynan because
Yep.
he's coming off the
Eisner.
Eisner, and he's still writing some of my favorite series, but the whole Substack thing where like the I don't want to say the quality tapered off towards the end, but as the Substack thing got announced and it was also being announced that he's no longer doing Batman, he's no longer doing the Joker and Nice House on the Lake, which again completely
Oof.
forgot about it. Right? That's another honorable mention. That's
Oof.
on a 6-month hiatus.
Hmm.
Like it really kind of like just took a bit of a nosedive for me that towards the end of 2021 because he'd been on such a heater and again maybe it's he's trying to divert his focus elsewhere and he's trying to maybe he's feeling he's been doing so much, so burnout definitely probably had to play a role in scaling back and then wanting to do things like on his own terms, but like man, there's still so many. He did so much great stuff, and it just I felt a little like bummed out, towards the end of the year.
Yeah,
But
it's brutal. Yeah, it's brutal. I mean,
Nice House on the Lake should be on this list as well because I completely forgot about it, and I probably will
that's
for the
crazy.
next 4 months, right? Because it's on hiatus, and I'm really upset
Well,
about
that's good. I mean, at least I'm glad you're going to be able to make it through because I know you were very upset when you found out about this pause. I mean, this is a rough year for I think for people for time readers who didn't necessarily want to subscribe to Substack just because it's just he's put a lot of time into that. It seems
it. Yeah.
like. But anyways, we're going to take a quick sidestep away from 2021 and look at the books we're most excited for in 2022. Although actually we want to look back at the books we thought we were most excited about for this year, Joe. Do you want to kick us off with that?
I do. So before we jump into next year, this is what we had picked for this year that we were excited for. So starting off, Wind Returns, the second arc of Wind. Absolutely loved it. I thought it was even better than the first arc. So again, we talk about Tynan. Like, he killed it with this. Like, the start of 2021 was great, and then it all sort of tapered off there at the end. Berserker, get the fuck out of here with this dumb book. Adios, muchacho. Fucking Berserker. I was so goddamn geeked up about this, Nicholas. And the first issue came out, and that's the other thing, is we had to wait even longer.
Yeah.
Because they had to, you knew something was up when they had to like redo all of the art. And the art was great. Like, that's not the problem with this book. The problem with this book is fucking pacing. It is brutal. So big swing and a miss.
Figure out what your deal is. You had all summer to do it.
No shit, right?
Yeah.
Looking at you, TMNT, fucking Last Ronin as well. That's another one that should have been on this list.
That's an honorable mention, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Proctor Valley Road, written by Grant Morrison. I was looking forward to this. It was very enjoyable. I enjoyed the hell out of this. This was a good book. Future State. We were all geeked up about Future State because, of course, we started our year with the Sean Lewis Future State, event, and then we ended it with the Scott Snyder Death Metal event. So, like, to say we were geeked up about Future State is an understatement. And I had written specifically Dark Detective and Superman of Metropolis. Dark Detective was hands down my favorite book of the event.
Yeah, it was really good.
Mariko Tamaki, Dan Mora, loved it. Superman of Metropolis was only 2 issues. It was good. It was written by Sean Lewis. And so, like, I enjoyed those books. Those are probably the things I enjoyed probably the most out of the event. I thought overall Future State, they just mishandled it. They mishandled the whole event. They could have done it. They could have done it a lot better, and it would have made a lot more sense. But it is what it is. It's a year gone by now. It's over with. We've moved on.
Yeah, it's on my list too. I'll go through mine before you give your. That's all yours, right? That's your whole list from last year.
Well, the Joker series.
Oh, I'm sorry.
James Tynan, right? Which is really a Jim Gordon story. And was really humming. And then Tynan announced he was moving to Substack and he was pulling back on the Joker, and it just kind of flatlined.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of been, for me, the story of 2021 with Tynan. Hot start, flatline finish.
So odd. Like, his situation seems like so. I'd love to hear more about like what's going on with it, what his deal is, because he seemed to have it figured out, and now like it's just everything. I mean, but who knows? 2022 could be a huge ass year for him. I wouldn't be stunned by that at all. As for me, you mentioned Future State. I say that's fine at the end of it all. Like, we've moved on and everything's fine. And we know some things got messed up, and we'll probably see some other things pop up. But it was like we had fun with it. We had some books that we liked. We had some that we didn't. For as big of a thing as it was, maybe fine is a bad thing. But in the end, in the end, it was okay. Like, I could have done without it, but I don't hate that we had it. There were some good books from it. I just wish that now we're still getting one Future State book every month, and I just would like it if it wasn't in black and white. But that's beside the point. X-Men Legends, I was really, really excited for this, and then we found out it was like an anthology thing. So it's like, a couple issues, one story, couple issues, another. I read the first 2, really, really enjoyed it, and it's like answering questions from over the years that are X-Men related. I fell off on this. I could see myself coming back on it just because it's just some stories you're going to be interested in, some not so much, but I thought it was solid. The first couple issues were really, really good. The Eternals by our guy Kieran Gillen, who I like a lot, and I don't think it was a poorly written series. Of course, I mean, he does a great job, but it just didn't do much for me in the end. They just, that's it. By the way, we talked about all these books from this year. We said it that it didn't need to start in 2021. Die was another one that finished this year. We absolutely love that series. One of my favorite series. Period. That I would love to recommend to most people. Like, it's, but obviously you talked about on the show. But that's one that can easily slip out because it's just because there was a pause, I think, and a lot of different stuff.
A lot of pauses. I mean, Die first started in 2019.
Yeah. So, but really. Oh, so good. The Kill Journal, actually, one I didn't get to read yet. I mean, we have the digital, but there's what Adam did, who we had on for the show. We had him on in 2019 about this. They were he was making a hard copy, and of course, all the printing issues and everything with COVID. I understand things happen, but he made like a hardcover version of this that basically looked like a text, like a Bible, like a novel, however you want to look at it, and it's called the Kill Journal. You said it yourself, Joe. You planted the seed in my head, and I just really stuck to it. I want to read this in this form. We haven't gotten that yet, so I haven't read it yet. I may just kind of be like, I'm just gonna read it and just fuck it, and read it as digital copy. But so I can't. It's still like an NA on my part.
I feel like we'll be getting it soon. I read the first issue because I was gonna read them all,
right?
And then I was like, no, I'm gonna follow Nick's lead. I want to read this when I get the hardcover. And the first issue was great.
Yeah, so,
I might cave as well, but I think we'll be getting that very soon.
We'll have to coordinate exactly how we want to do it, because we did have a plan originally, but then things have kind of gone sideways. Happens. But then there's the plot holes, which was my number one. It was number one with the bullet for me coming into this year, looking for it, and then it absolutely delivered. And I'm so glad that it's going to be available for you guys to go purchase on Sean's website. I hope he does something with image too, and like prints it in like a graphic novel form. Everybody needs to get their hands on this. Like, if you like literature and you have like at all a sense of humor, I think you can enjoy this. It was really, really fun, and it has it could be turned into a show if they wanted to. If you wanted to, it could be a movie too. It's just Sean kicked ass with this 100%.
And there's a great little Easter egg that we got from Katana Collins. Right,
Mm-hmm.
Knowing about when we did our interview with her, she talked about this comic, this graphic novel that she and Sean enjoy called Cafe Racer.
Yeah,
and that was actually one of the books and one of the panels of Sean's in the plot hole. So
good.
He had a lot of fun with it, you could tell, and it was a really good story.
So good. But no, we said we were going to look forward to next year, and it's time for us to do that. Why don't you kick us off with the 2022 books that you are most excited about, Joe?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to rehashing these this time next year, because there's some fucking good books on this list. The Scorched. Right. I mean, I don't think that's number one with a bullet for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't wait for that interview with Sean to drop. It feels like a year ago that we fucking did it.
Annoying.
Right? But it got pushed back. But his enthusiasm for the violence in that book is pants tent city.
Oh yeah.
Radiant Red.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to this. This is a spinoff for Radiant Black. This one, should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. Destiny of X by Benjamin Percy.
Yeah, I missed this one because in the course of all these X-Men announcements, I know we have the X Lives of Wolverine and the X Deaths of Wolverine that we're talking about, but this is a whole nother thing. And I mean, there's a character, Destiny, who's at the center of Inferno. So I'm assuming it's centered around her. Anything Benjamin Percy's doing with the X-Men.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, too, I mean, I just kind of want to lump all of those books together that Percy's doing, like just in general, like the X-Men, Wolverine, Destiny of X, Ghost Rider, like he's got some books coming out, right, like to start of this year, right, that I just kind of want to all lump together, and maybe I'll make a note, just like Benjamin Percy, right, because all those books sound fantastic, so I'm looking forward to those.
Ghost Rider's a good call. Did not make my list, but I forgot. That's
right. Batman Beyond the White Knight.
Mm-hmm.
I am pumped and jacked about this. I mean, Sean Murphy's writing, Sean Murphy's drawing. We're getting Batman Beyond. Yeah, I am in. And then last, but certainly not least, the return of Saga.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yes. Give me. I mean, so Saga's on my list. The Scorched is on my list. The X Lives and X Deaths of Wolverine are on my list as well. Ghost Rider could have made the cut. Definitely one that skipped my mind. The Punisher series, I'm very excited about too. But the last two that make my list aside the other ones that doubled up with Joe, Gambit, because we got Claremont coming back. This is a character he one of the characters he created. Obviously, one of the greatest X-Men writers of all time, if not the greatest X-Men writer of all time. He's coming back. He's writing friggin' Gambit. A character that is just never.
I almost
done
put this on my list.
Oh yeah. Well, the fact that it's not pisses me off actually. Now that you thought about it, you didn't just forget. You thought about it and chose not to do it. And then the Book of Evil from Jock and Scott Snyder now Scott, when he told us about it a little while back when we had him on, it sounds like this is going to be a little bit different from the other stuff that he's done, and I'm very interested to see what this looks like. And obviously him and Jock working together, I mean, usually it's a recipe for success. Obviously Witches, and then what is the Batman Who Laughs series too? Oh,
Yeah.
you got that for your nephew, right, for Christmas?
No, he bought it himself.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, that kid's tougher than you.
And so, of course he is. And so I asked him about it. He goes, yeah. He goes, that was, it was definitely a bit much. But speaking of that, so Christmas, there's a little side note real quick. So for Christmas, I got him 3 graphic novels.
Ooh.
So because he picked up the Batman Who Laughs, I was like, okay, he's ready for a new level of graphic novels here. So the first one I got him was Hawkeye by Matt Fraction. The series is coming out. It's if you like the show, Patrick, you're gonna love this comic. And he was reading it within 5 minutes of opening his gift, and he was loving the Tracksuit Mafia, which was great. So it warmed my heart. The next one I gave him, Nicholas, because he needs more X-Men in his life. I got him X-Men 92, Volume 1.
Oh yeah, yes.
Right, because he's a big Spider-Man guy. He's a big Batman guy. So I'm trying to, open his horizons a little bit. And so you need some X-Men in your life, son.
Oh yeah, that's a great way to do it. Great. Honestly, couldn't recommend it enough. Like I think anybody who I think people of our age are going to enjoy that a lot, and I think people of your nephew's age too, and maybe a little bit older even. If you like the X-Men 92, or if you're introducing somebody to X-Men 92, and then you want hey, you like that, this is the comics, and this is some stuff you've done with those characters. Great way to do it. Great call, Joe.
And then the last one I gave him, and this was the biggest boy book
Hotel.
that I gave him Mouse.
Oh,
no,
jeez. Wow, that's a throwback. I read that in high school, actually.
So he's a Batman guy, and so I said, Patrick, if you're gonna be a comic reader worth your salt, and you're gonna be a Batman guy, you need the greatest Batman story that there is, especially when it comes to his origin stories. You need Batman Year One.
Ooh,
his first introduction to Frank Miller. This is definitely the darkest and the grittiest book that I got him out of the 3. I mean, he's 11; he'll be 12 in July. But I felt like, okay, right?
It's a big boy book.
You're gonna do it. You're gonna do it right. And I said, when you finish this, let me know, because then we're gonna move on to The Long Halloween, and then we're gonna move to Hush. Yeah. You want Batman books? You want to read the 3 greatest, 3 of the greatest Batman books there are? These are the 3 that you start with, right?
Low key, Joe's developing his replacement right now. It's like a Brett Favre Aaron Rodgers situation.
So that was his Christmas gift, and he was really pumped for all those books. But I think the Batman book, he was like, because I think for him, I was trying to put myself in his shoes. Like if my uncle had given me that book when I was his age, I would have been like, oh man, this is the big leagues kind of thing. So that was fun.
It's a big step up. Good job with that. That's a really good job.
Thank you, sir. So a couple of quick honorable mentions before we go on to the awards. Punchline, which was was a B story in Detective Comics. B story in the Batman run, and the solo issue was fine. The Last Ronin, 5 issues. It's 12 months later. It's still not done.
Yeah, no.
Still not done.
Yeah, at first I'm like, oh, we didn't put that on our list, but it's like, you know what? No, they've taken way too long with this shit. Like, it doesn't deserve to be on that top 5 list. It's really good. The story's great.
Really good, but yeah, get your shit together. Batman Urban Legends, we're looking forward to. More specifically, Zdarsky's first issue there with the Batman Red Hood.
That was great in the Rosenberg with Grifter too.
Yeah, that was great. So that was that.
Before we move on to our best of series, I did want to mention one gift that I got that I told you about.
Oh yeah.
We're thinking about finding a way to incorporate in our show down the line. We'll see. We got to workshop it still, but I still want to show people the League of Regrettable Superheroes. This was actually Lauren's sister and her husband got me this book, and it's half-baked heroes from comic book history. So it's like a lot of heroes that just like came out and just didn't end up panning out. And the
Now, is
art on
Doiby Diggles in there, or was he a
maybe.
bad guy?
You know who's actually in there is Peacemaker,
That's
which was
tremendous.
yeah, it's pretty funny. But like I'm saying, Stardust,
Angel Dust.
Nelvana. So it's just the Nelvana of the Northern Lights, excuse me. So obviously we really
Yeah.
missed out on that one. I don't know how that didn't take off. But let's move on to our individual awards. This is what everybody's tuning in for. We have the X-Men the Animated Series Award for Best Series of 2021.
Crossover. I didn't hide it.
No.
This was just such and is such a great series. Just everything Donny Cates is doing with it has been fun. The self-deprecating stuff, going after the writers, but the story themselves, the looking for all the different characters from all the different properties. This has just been a great series. I've enjoyed it immensely, and gets my pick for best of the year.
I think it's a great pick. It is not my pick, but absolutely would be on my short list. But when obviously this is a book that had to begin in 2021. Now you know what my nominee is, but I have one waiting in second. Does it have to be an ongoing series, or does it have to be?
No.
No, okay, then there's no question in my mind. It's the plot holes. Then,
Yeah.
absolutely love it. It's a page turner. You're all not going to get unless you back the campaign, you're not getting access to it till next year. But it's really. It's so good. It's a quick and easy read. King Spawn is my number 2. That's my honorable mention. And look, I love Spawn. I love what Sean Lewis has done with this series. But Spawn is one of my favorite comic book characters. Period. But the plot holes is just.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such an easy read, Joe.
And it was so unique, and it was so
Yeah.
fun, and it was interesting and engaging. I mean, it's all the things that makes comics great.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that was a no-brainer on my part. So we move on to the Hawkeye Award for most surprising book of 2021.
So I threw a monkey wrench in here last minute, Nicholas. So I know that I've been saying for a while now that my winner with a bullet would be Robin.
Yeah.
I went with Nightwing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I'll tell you why. Because Robin was such a surprising book for me. So was it Nightwing, because I don't read Nightwing either. And I haven't really read much Nightwing. The only Nightwing I would get would be whatever was in the movies, or he would pop up here and there in books. But to me, what Nightwing has become, it has become my Daredevil replacement.
Mm-hmm.
So what Daredevil was for me, back in 2019 when Zdarsky, started writing it, the way he approached the character, the way that became a must-read, top of the stack book for me every week. I've got those same vibes, that same feeling with Nightwing that I didn't expect. Like Tom Taylor writing Nightwing, okay, this has potential. And I didn't realize just how good it would be. And he's tapped into that character the same way Zdarsky tapped into Daredevil. And for that, to me, really just that's what sort of put it over Robin. Like Robin has been fun as hell to read. And that would completely blindsided me with how much I enjoyed it and still enjoy it. But for me, it had to be Nightwing, because this just Tom Taylor is like I said, this is going to go from possibly most underrated, surprising book of 2021 to maybe like my best ongoing series for 2022. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Tom Taylor obviously had a lot of books when we talked about Seven Secrets. Of course, you have Nightwing. We didn't mention any of those for best ongoing series, but both awesome. Dark Knights of Steel, which is another one.
Yeah,
too, that
right.
Began.
There's so many.
Dark Ages too. The Marvel, of course, that's a limited series, but still. But yeah, I've honestly
And I should have had Dark Knights of Steel on and on, because that book, it's so different and it's so awesome.
Yeah. We've gone back to that section so much.
I know, right?
But thankfully we definitively knew at least our best individual series of the year. For me, the most surprising, underrated book of 2021, I was blown away by Shadecraft. I love Bunny Mask. Basilisk hit me like I was hit over the head with a hammer with that thing. Last book you'll ever read was great too. Although that one I thought was going to kick ass just because of that title. But I gotta go with Lucky Devil, Joe. Like I saw this and I'm and honestly, I think, okay, I like Dark Horse. I like some of their stuff, but when I see Dark Horse right away, I'm like, Okay, like, all right, maybe. But then I see Cullen's like, okay, well, okay, now you have my attention. All right, and dude, he just like he's
Yeah.
knocked it out of the park with this one from the first issue, and I didn't like it just wasn't on my radar at all. Whereas Basilisk, and then of course you put last book you ever read on my radar right away. Lucky Devil wasn't, and it's just been. Oh, and of course, you're dealing with religious stuff. Of course, that's going to draw my attention. I'm going to like that stuff more. And, angels and demons and everything. And then, like, faith and all this craziness that's ensued from this one guy and all the, oh, so good. So, yeah, no question in my mind, that's been the one that caught me off guard this year.
Yeah, and so like it was it was Robin up until the last minute, but also the Good Asian, Newburn, and Gun Honey.
The Good
Like
Asian's good. Oh,
you'll have to read it sometime.
yeah, maybe.
Newburn, we've talked about that a few times, but then Gun
Yeah.
Honey,
Yeah.
there was a split second where I almost put Gun Honey as my winner. Like
That's,
all of these books here, man, they came on late in the year. They all blew. Well, Robin and Nightwing not late, but like Good Asian, like just man, so fucking good. All of them.
You put Newburn. I see. You say Newburn as your most surprising though. Like it's Zdarsky. You knew it was going to be good.
Well, but here's the so I put it there because like I had no idea this was coming, and then
Ah,
Image says review this, and then boom, I read it. I was like, oh, like so that
yeah.
that's kind of why I put it there because this wasn't one that was on a radar until we they asked us
We
to review it.
inhaled that shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We inhaled that shit. And for Gun Honey, that's for those who don't know, that one's a Titan book.
Yep.
Um,
And it's
that
been
was
optioned already, so
yeah. So in that
lots of boobies.
you plan on talking about that book on the show at some point, right?
Yeah, it'll probably be the first book I talk about for Mainline when we get to it in the
Oh,
new year.
okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, January is a weird month for us. We got a couple things coming. Of course, we've been telling you guys about the Sean Lewis interview that we have in the can. As long as the Scorch is still planned to come out in January, then you're going to be getting that interview the week that book comes out. We got a few other things cooking as well. We actually haven't been mentioning it to people, but we're going to be doing our solicit from now on the first week of the month. We said we were going to say that every episode. I haven't said it once since we made that decision. Of course, we're doing the annual the last week of the month. We're going to be doing that going forward. So the first week of January will be the January solicit and so on and so forth. Instead of the last week of the month, like we've been doing previously. Then we go ahead. So we just did the Hawkeye Award. Now we move over to the Stan Lee Award for Best Writer of 2021. Joe, who do you got?
Wow, this is pretty obvious. It's Tom Taylor. I mean, there's no that to me there was. I mean, there was a lot of There's a lot of good candidates, but for me, it was just Tom Taylor. He's been able to like I said, what he did with Nightwing, emotionally connect to a character that I wasn't, very emotionally connected to, elevate that character for me. But Dark Steel, Dark Knights of Steel, Dark Ages, Seven Secrets. Yeah, so many good books from him this year. Just he was on a fucking freight train. Loved it.
Yeah. So when we first did this, to me, he's the obvious choice. And I'm like, all right, well, I want to highlight somebody else. But because I have two other guys who are right there on my list. And I know, Black Widow continued for this year too, and Kelly Thompson did great with that series. And of course, you have Scott Snyder, Kyle Higgins, who are on our honorable mentions, Ryan Parrott, who I loved what he's doing with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and of course, our guy Rodney Barnes, especially with Nita Hawes getting thrown in the mix. Those are all on our honorable mentions. But Cullen Bunn and Sean Lewis are the other two that are on my list, on my short list, on my top three. But Tom Taylor, Joe, I mean, it has to go to him. I know we didn't mention any of his books in Best Ongoing Series, but like we're
Well, it's because I purposely saved it for, you know what I mean? I don't want to have too much repetition.
Gotcha. Well, Nightwing's been I've been reading Nightwing, since I think Benjamin Percy was on it at first when it was in Rebirth, and obviously there's been a lot of changes in time. The Rick Grayson run and everything. And, he's been kicking ass with that. Dark Knights of Steel, Dark Ages over at Marvel. We mentioned some of his other books already. Like he's doing an awesome job. He gets this exclusive deal with DC. That's huge too. You know, like a lot of like creator-owned stuff right now. Of course, I think Seven Secrets is creator-owned. It's with Boom, so it may not be. But like creator-owned, all those other people, Scott and everybody are doing awesome. Cullen Bunn is kicking ass, and he's probably number 2 on my list. I got to go with Tom Taylor though. Cullen, I mean, killed it with Basilisk. He killed it with Last Book You Ever Read. And Lucky Devil, I said already, I've gushed over that enough. And Sean, I mean, what he did is similar to what Tom Taylor did, in that he's taking a legacy character and he's like he's getting handed the reins, but like it's spawned, so it's a little bit different, and it's like, wow, man, you're just like you've got this character down. You're doing an awesome job. You have the pace and everything right. And then Javi Fernandez was doing a great job too. And then I think if the Scorched had began, in December, if it had come out when it was originally planned to, then maybe Sean could have inched his way up, because you guys all know I love Spawn. I said he's one of my favorite characters, but I can't put him past Cullen because Cullen had 3 knockout books. And then Tom Taylor, to do it with a DC or Marvel character, and then he's doing it with multiple characters. That's so hard to do, and I'm really impressed with everything he's done. So I gotta agree with you. Like, Tom Taylor is our Stan Lee Award winner for this year, no questions asked.
Yeah, I would have if it wasn't Tom Taylor, it probably would have been Sean Lewis because of Bliss
Yep.
and King Spawn.
Mhm.
Just 2 knockout books. But again, Snyder, Higgins, Parrott, Rodney, right? He's got a lot of great stuff out. So some really good writers write some really good shit this year. Like I said, 2021 has been an absolute knockout.
I feel bad. Sean's been the bridesmaid for me twice so far. King Spawn was the second best series of the year, and now he's right there. He's number 2 for us, I guess, if you look at our voting for best writer of the year. But enough of that. Let's move on to our best artist of the year for the Jack Kirby Award. Joe, who you got?
So we're doing a little something different with this as well, because we're doing best like artist for interiors, but then also best cover artist. And I couldn't think of a snappy name for best cover artist, but
We'll get there.
overall best artist for me in 2021 was Werther Dell'Edera, because his work with Tynan and Something Is Killing the Children. Like that is, I know I didn't mention Something Is Killing the Children, but that is one of my favorite books. I love reading that, and I know that I've been a little down on House of Slaughter, but there's something about his art, the way he draws eyes and his facial expressions. Like, he evokes a lot of emotion, a lot of, whether it's sadness or anger or fear. Like, there's just something about his art this year that I found, whether it's interiors or covers, that really just kind of hits me a little bit different than, and that's not to say I haven't enjoyed a lot of the other artists I have, but like from an interior standpoint, like that's one of the things that makes me love Something Is Killing the Children so much. It's not just a great storytelling, but the art. And that's one of the books where I'm like, the art is just as impactful, if not even sometimes more than the story. So for 2021, I went with Werther Dell'Edera. And yep, sorry, go ahead.
And then I think when you talk about breakout artists, like, we don't have a category for that. You mentioned we have one for cover artists, and we'll get to that in a second. But for breakout artist of the year, I got to say Javi Fernandez,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he's doing King Spawn with Sean. I mean, and again, there's a reason this is one of the best series of the year. And of course, I like what Sean Murphy's doing too. He's not going to go and make get the top vote for me, but with the plot holes. But Javi Fernandez was great. I know you're loving Francis Manipal's work over on Clear. Greg Capullo, of course, is doing We Have Demons. Anytime he's doing stuff, I mean, he's kicking ass, right? And we loved having him on the show. But for me, number 1 has got to go to Dan Mora. This guy is an absolute machine. This person right here, this human being, is doing Detective Comics, and he's doing Once and Future. And I mean, look, I know there are some artists who do multiple books at a time, but it is not an easy thing to do. And if one of them's detective, I don't know monetarily.
Yeah, Detective Comics comes out every 2 weeks.
That's crazy. He's killing it right now.
Yeah.
And you start the year doing Dark Detective, and it's like, oh my God, this is awesome. And the end of the year, you're putting Gran in Detective Comics.
Right.
When that's your bookends of the year, I think you're doing something right. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was my pick last year for best artist of 2020. So Dan Mora, definitely one of the best,
Yeah,
for sure.
one of the
So
best in
then,
business.
best cover artists.
Mm-hmm.
So this was, I almost went with Patrick Gleason, because I love that Webhead series so much that he did.
Ooh, that's a good call.
Right, with the spider coming down. But I went with friend of the show, Sheldon Buchert.
Mm.
I mean, his Radiant Black, one of his Radiant Black covers is one of my favorite covers, period,
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
from the year. And I have it hanging up on my wall. And he was very gracious, you know, all joking aside, you can just buy your way on for this award. Just kidding. But so no, he was very gracious because I bought some Spider Gwen art, or for Violet. Or I was thinking about it. He's like, well, if you buy this one, I'll throw that in, and so it all worked out. So like, I've got a lot of his stuff hanging up, but he was also gracious enough to throw in the actual copy of that issue of Radiant Black that he did the
Wow.
cover for, and then he drew a little thing on the side. So like, I don't know, I love his art, and that I should have grabbed the cover of it, but that cover of Radiant Black, just the use of red and blue and everything, it for me it's like a perfect cover. I love it
Mm.
so much. It's hanging up in Bag End. So Sheldon, if you're listening, you're my choice for best cover artist of 2021.
I think Joe's vote should carry a little more weight on this one. So I think you and Nick can win this. Although I say that, and now Sheldon does some awesome stuff. His like the Radiant Black thing is cool, but the Spider Gwen shit for me is that's
Yeah,
awesome. That's
yeah,
just so cool. Great follow on Instagram too. I think it's just Sheldon Bucher art, right?
yep.
But I gotta go with another friend of the show for this one, Joe. And I felt like so after we had this guy on the show, I kind of felt bad a little bit because did I compliment him too much? Because like I don't want him to think I'm disingenuous and just trying to kiss his ass because he's on the show. Because I don't do that. Am I wrong? Do I do that with a lot of people we have on the show? Like compliment them up and down?
The only ass you kiss on the show is your own.
Right. So like well played. But when when we had John Boy Myers on, I mean, we met him at Boston Fan Expo, and then he's got this with that the gunslinger spawn sketch that he did was
Yeah.
unreal,
Yeah.
and that's like he's not even doing stuff for them. It's like Todd, what are you waiting for? Go get him back on doing spawn shit for you, even if it's just the covers. But man, you see the Venom stuff, and even the like. He makes me want to like Berserker so much more. Like
I know, right?
and when you're doing that, like with a title that we know frustrates the shit out of us, that you're doing something right. But a ton of Venom stuff, some Carnage shit, Spidey, like, and then
Yeah.
you see just and
It's
then
what's
you see
a future cover.
yeah. Oh, the King
Right?
Arthur shit.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was really good. If we did best cover of the year, I think that would be a tough episode. A, it's tough for audio purposes, but B, like that'd be a tough one if we just
It'd be
picked
hard to
like,
knock that one. Hard to knock that one off the list for sure. It was so good. But yeah,
Mhm.
he was great to talk to in person at Boston
Such a
Fan
nice guy.
Expo, and we had a great interview with him. I'm almost inclined for next year just to name this a John Boy Myers Best Cover Artist award. Let's give it a name.
All right.
Not just
Yep.
lump it under the
I
Jack
think
Kirby
I
Award.
think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So there you go. John Boy Myers Award. So that means I guess John Boy wins it. But we gotta have Sheldon on the show at some point down the line because obviously I know you two have talked quite a bit. And he does some great stuff, and I
really
want to
does.
hear more.
I got to
about
buy
that.
his Spider-Man 2099 print as well because that thing is. I mean, I love the 2099 suit, and his action sequences there for those things that he draws or prints that he makes are absolutely fantastic.
Those are two of the better follows on Instagram. Like we tweet. So if you don't follow us on Instagram, again, what are you doing? We tweet out some of the best art and all the best art that's out there in comics. But those two, like those are some of the best individual artist pages you can find on Instagram. Of course, Greg Capullo did a lot of Spawn stuff. Really enjoyed that. Same with anything Brett Booth did, who should be up there for actually best artist of the year because his gunslinger stuff is great.
Yeah, really is.
Chris Sheehan, I know was on your short list as well
for autumnal, and he's despite what I say about House of Slaughter, he's doing the art on that. The art on that's fantastic.
Nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
The issues you have nothing to do with him. Of course, Tyler Kirkham is one of the best cover artists in the business, and that guy's churning out stuff every other day. It seems like. And Dan Mora, who's been a back-to-back Jack Kirby Award nominee. He put him in the cover artist conversation too, because he's doing Power Ranger stuff. I don't know how that man sleeps. Like, he's just so busy. I mean, he has to be one of the busiest people in comics right now.
Yeah, and his stuff's fan. I mean, it's not what I love about his art too is that, like, just like those other guys I mentioned, like when you see a Dan Mora cover, it's a Dan Mora, cover. It's his art because it's the way he draws his faces. It's very distinct. Like a Capullo cover when you see it, a John Boy Meyer cover when you see it, a Kirkham cover when you see it, and a Mora cover.
Yeah,
100%. Same thing with Mirka and Dolphin should be on here too, because she does some awesome covers as well.
She does, yeah. It's someone who, man, I got to talk about Sweet Paprika on this show. It's going to be hard because it's going to be a real dirty episode.
Maybe save it for Valentine's Day.
Oh boy, that's what we're going to do. All right, I already know my Valentine's Day episode.
I got my Valentine's Day book. So,
what is it? You want to save it?
You want me to give it away?
No, you can save it. You can save a little bit of surprise. All right. So that brings us to, because this episode hasn't been long enough, brings us to our last award, the most important award, but also probably the most obvious winner for the year. The MVP for most valuable publisher in 2021, Joe, is
Image.
100%.
I mean, it couldn't be anyone else. I mean, although like AWA was up for like real strong consideration, because like to start the year, like they've just been cranking out some really good stuff. They've had a couple of, I wouldn't say misses, but like Out, even though I haven't read issue 3 yet, like Out has just been okay. Marjorie Finnegan, we talked about, like, okay, a couple issues too long.
But Hotel's back.
I loved Crimson Cage. They've put out some really great shit. The problem is Image has put out about 4 times as much stuff, and 90% of it I've read. Right? Like, and it's been awesome.
Real quick, looking back at the best ongoing series of 2021 list, for your list, you have Philadelphia, Radiant Black, Crossover, King Spawn. I also have King Spawn. Then I have Newburn and Nita Hawes' Nightmare Blog. So we had 10 nominees ourselves, actually 9 between the two of us, because we both had King Spawn, and 6 books were Image books. Yeah. Says it all right there.
Right there. So, Image, take home your prize. And please send us more free comic books.
Yes. And also the other thing, this has nothing to do with it, but if you look at who we've had on the show most, like in terms of writers and artists, we've had more people on to talk about their Image stuff, and I think they do a really good job of trying to get their stuff out there too. Makes a big difference. We've had some AWA people on, and we, when we had Kieran on, we talked a little bit about Boom, but like with Chip, obviously we talked about Daredevil. But yeah, I mean, like Image does a really good job of getting their people out there to talk about their books, and also this creator owned. So there's incentive for the writers to go and do that stuff. And the
Scott
artists,
Snyder, I mean, like they've
he's in all the Nocturne stuff.
Image has been really good to us this year. Yeah,
and you look back at and we're not going to rank the guests, but I do want to just as the last thing, we like look back at. I don't want to mention all the names because I don't have them written down in front of me, so I will forget. If you have it written down somewhere, Joe, by all means, pull it up. But the amount of guests that we had on this year, Joe and I did not set out to do that when we began this show. I said it when we had our 1-year anniversary, and I'll say it again till the day the show ends. Like we never set out to have people on this show, and like guests, and we've had. What it turned into in 2021 is insane. And I am so thankful for that and grateful. And I hope we can continue to highlight other creators down the line, and give you guys the best interviews in the business, because Joe and I have fun every time with these interviews. And we hope you do too. And we know, it seems like the people we have on do, because most of them come back.
Yeah. I mean, we've had Sean Lewis on twice this year. We've had Rodney Barnes on twice this year. We've had Scott Snyder on 3 times this year. We've had Corey Pruitt, we've had Brockton McKinney and Dave Dwanch to talk about Johnny Zero. I mean, Axel Alonso, Benjamin Percy, Chip fucking Zdarsky, right? Those are just a couple off the top of I mean, man, it's
Capullo,
been such a
Kieran Gillen, Stephanie Hans, right? John Boy Myers, Kyle Higgins. I mean, Cullen we had on early in the year too.
Cullen twice. right?
Was it 2 times this year? Yeah, it's both times this year. Yeah. We had them both
Yeah.
on this. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, that's been so fun. I never ever would have imagined. I still
It is,
remember
everybody.
where I was when you asked me if I wanted to interview Scott Snyder that first time. I was
Yeah.
sitting in the fucking parking lot at Supercuts. He's like, yeah. I'll make that happen. Don't you worry about it. And never would have imagined that would have, spawned into what it's become. And we've had these sort of grand ideas, and they've come to fruition. We've been very lucky and very fortunate. So 2021 was a great year.
I would like the moment for me. Like I enjoyed every interview that we had, but the moment for me of the show was doing a live interview with Scott and Capullo. Like that was
Yeah,
crazy. That
yeah.
couldn't have gone any better. And Scott brought it up, and for months we're like, all right, we got to be ready. Like when they want to do it, we're gonna do it. We got to make sure we get it
Oh,
done.
I was a pain in your fucking ass about it.
But we got it done. That's all
Yeah.
that matters. Like I don't
Don't
care. As long
don't
as the end,
forget, don't forget. Text him, email him, and it came to pass. So
it did.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just. Man, it's been a fun year, Joe, and I
yeah,
can't wait for 2022 to get rolling
yeah,
with comics.
yeah. When we actually talk comics, which won't be until fucking February, but
Well, we got our solicit coming up. We're gonna do something for you all for Saga. We may have somebody, somebody else in the DSG joining us for a little something.
Two hopefully interviews, fireside chats for January.
Yep, we have one in the can that you all
Yep.
know about with Sean, and we've been talking to Ben, so talking Wolverine. Can't wait for that. Was there another one you were thinking of off the top of your that?
No, that's
Those
what I
two.
said too, right?
Okay, and then January is gonna be a busy month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, this is the longest TLDR ever.
Yeah.
So you guys may not need an episode next week, but you're gonna get one. So until then, Joe, stay sexy.
You know it.